In lesson 2, I talked about right hand technique in terms of muting the strings, actually with the left hand as well, and just making sure that you can keep the guitar under control. Now, in addition to just using the plectrum with your right hand, with the sort of down up strokes, you can actually use your fingers. Now, my uncle, when I first got a guitar, he gave me a little bit of advice at the beginning. He said, don't use a plectrum for a bit. Try just using your fingers. And actually there's a lot to be said for that. Now, using your fingers, well, as for me at any rate, is slower than using a plectrum, which actually is quite a good thing. It makes me think about phrasing a little bit more. So if I'm playing blues, it means that I can't overplay. If I've got plectrum and I'm going something like this, it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just lots and lots of fast notes. Sure, a little fast flurry once in a while, that's fine, but not all the time. Thinking in terms of phrasing is really important. That might just be the ticket if it's a slow blues and you just want that sort of real edgy sound, because with your fingers you can do, well, a bass player, if they're doing sort of slap bass, that sometimes you can sort of pull the strings slightly away from the fretboard to get a real sort of tough sound. That's quite a nice thing to have. So sticking with the 5th and the 7th fret on the middle 2 strings, using your index and annular fingers. Remember to use all your fingers on your left hand if needed. Now, the added advantage with this is if you're playing a riff that goes across 2 strings, that's quite a lot of work for the plectrum to do. You've got to constantly move. Whereas if you assign your thumb to one string and your forefinger, your index finger on your right hand, to another string, you can actually play some sort of faster things that are a little bit more efficient. You can also, if you use your middle finger as well, you can actually play some chords, and you don't have to do all that work with the plectrum, and actually it might be slightly easier. Now, of course, we can combine the two. If I've got my plectrum held between my thumb and index finger, I could use my middle finger, or I could actually use all 3, but usually you'd use your middle finger or annular finger. So I've got plectrum on the 4th string, and then my finger on the 3rd string. And you can of course get those variations in sound which are actually quite good as well. You can do that sort of thing. Now, if I've got something where the strings are, you know, the notes that I want to play in my solo are a few strings apart, I could use the plectrum and finger combination to actually help me move across those strings. So I've got plectrum here. On the 1st string, I've got my middle finger on my right hand. And then I've brought my plectrum up to the 2nd string. So I've just got that little riff there. If I did it all with the plectrum, it's okay, it's fine. But with that finger, just pulling the string from the fretboard gives it a little bit more of sort of variety. Of course, I could do it all with fingers. I can use my annular finger. You wouldn't usually use your last finger. In fact, in classical guitar playing, you don't really use it at all. You're really using the first 4 fingers because the last finger is a little bit weaker and a bit more difficult to move. However, I could do some chords. If I've got my plectrum on the 5th string open and use my other fingers, my 3 remaining fingers, to play the next 3 strings, I can create something that's got those chords in as well. With the plectrum, it would be slightly more difficult because I've actually got my bar finger across 5th fret. So I've got that note. But I wouldn't want that. necessarily. Of course you can, but if you want to restrict your fingers, to create a bit of variety, that's kind of how you do it. So I'm using my plectrum in combination with my fingers. Of course, at the same time as in lesson 2, you've just got to keep in mind that you've got to mute each note after you've played it. So if I do this, I've got that note sounding there. So it is about keeping that level of control. Now the advantage of using your fingers is that it's easier to find the string that you want, because your plectrum is kind of rooted to the spot on one string and you're using your fingers on the other strings. So it does give you a little bit, everything seems just a little bit closer together. Of course, it's still handy to be able to practice any string. Without looking at the instrument, without looking at your right hand. Ideally, you wouldn't look at the guitar neck at all, really. It's just a little reference point where if you're going to move a solo, but gradually you get used to the fact that the frets are further apart here than they are there. So actually not looking at the instrument means, of course, you can communicate with the band members, you can read lyrics if you need to, or you can look at the audience, you can look at the other members of the band, do all of that sort of thing, so you're not fully sort of engrossed in the guitar neck. And actually when you look around, your ears are more fine-tuned because you're not actually looking at your instrument. So using your hearing, using your ears when you're playing is really important, and you will find that that will improve when you're not actually looking at your instrument. So there's a little bit more about right hand technique.